In boardrooms across the world, something strange is happening. Dashboards are getting greener ever, controls are implemented, audits are satisfactory, and yet trust feels fragile. Our one regulatory notice, one whistleblower email, and the illusion cracks. Question every CXO equally and quietly asking is this: if our GRC is so mature, why does the board still not sleep well night in the night? We are living in a world where strategy, growth, and risk are now fused. AI is rewriting how the fraud happens, how attacks unfold, and how compliance is intercepted. Cloud has dissolved the traditional perimeter. Regulations are moving faster in a new era of GRC controls. Just cannot be checkboxes. They must become language of real deep boardroom trust where boards believe not just controls exist, but the organizations can trusted under stress. This is the new leadership frontier. Our guest today lives in the same intersection of controls, culture, boardrooms, and confidence. Rajesh TR, a seasoned cybersecurity and GRC leader, Director of Cybersecurity and Resilience, ISE, ISACA, ISACA Bangalore Chapter President, BSCI Certified Strategies. Let's bring Sir to the podcast and dive into the topic. Sir, good evening. Welcome to the podcast, sir. How
Thank
are you?
you.
How are you today, sir?
I'm good, and it's the first week, and it's good going on. And first session in the third week, it's coming.
Yes. Sir, a small intro about yourself and your journey over the years on what you've been doing for the audience sake, sir.
Thank you. I am T.R. Rajesh, and I live in Bangalore. But my journey started from Delhi and the capital. When I completed my graduation and when I reached Delhi with the different skills, then initially at that time and getting a job was not that much tough the way which you are like, all of you are experiencing even after with all the qualification, it's not that much easy to get into the corporates or any of the professional life in our time, and it's around 30 years back. And having a good skill and you will enter into a corporate. Now, my journey started when I reached Delhi after 2 days. And from there, I had an opportunity to get into IBM in 1997. And after that, when IBM and a spun off happened, and in 2021, I became one of the Kindle employee. That is my 28 years of journey in the corporate world. Um, it was a learning by itself. And staying in one organization for 28 years, uh, it's not that much easy for you, at least for all the Gen Zs. For us, maybe we say that, okay, stability is what we looked at it. But this 28 years, we changed multiple roles within the organization, and the organization that the trust and the transparency built in, and we lived in the organization. It's a life for us for the organization. That's my brief introduction, and that's where I am here. And with this broadcast, I am T.R. Rajesh, and Director of Security and Resiliency, mainly for security assurance. That's your GRC domain. With that, Prem, back to you.
Sir, thank you. It's 28 years in a single organization, as you rightly said. Nobody thinks in that language. At least in today's generation, people don't stay that long in an organization, and the learning would be amazing because I think the curves that you take, the roles that you take in the overall 28 years is. I've been in Wipro for 12.8 years, and that's a journey that I cherish every moment because that's an organization where I learned a lot of things. I think that's the same thing that you are going through is what. Sir, when you look most of the GRC programs, what is the fundamental gap between controls on paper and trust on the boards can feel, sir?
It's an interesting question, and this is a reality. If you look at today, most enterprise governance, risk, and compliance, we call it a GRC program, literally suffer from a disconnect where the documented controls fail to translate into demonstrate effectiveness and business aligned assurance. One of the point which you just now heard it, correct? All the metrics are green, and then why we still have a problem? That leaves boards without the tangible confidence needed for the strategic oversight. That is a bigger piece for a GRC to look at that. The core issue lies in treating GRC as a compliance exercise rather than a trust building architecture. That is one of the biggest things which most of the organizations are going through today. If I want to highlight some of the key gaps which at least we experienced in the past, the GRC, and when we started, there was no term called GRC, correct? The GRC often features siloed processes, manual tracking, and static documentation that lacks the real visibility into control performance. That is what the expectation. Most of the boards frequently lack integrated reporting on risk impact, leading maybe 45 to 50 percentage of demand external audits, despite having most of the teams claiming effective internal control assessments. The other biggest issue, the communication barrier, arises when GRC is viewed as a technical cost center rather than a business enabler, eroding the fiduciary trust. If I look at otherwise, in most of the cases, the control exists on paper through policies, spreadsheet, but it lacks the continuous monitoring, automation, and proof of efficiency. That is what the CISO see value in monitoring, and how do I implement a control monitoring for the organization. If I put that monitoring in place, then that will become from a fragmented approach to a controlled environment that give a confidence to the board saying that this is just not a vulnerability without the telemetric driven evidence of its resiliency. How? In that sense, how do we build or create a path to trust architecture? That's the biggest question which we look at it, correct? Shifting from the checkbox compliance requires good integrated platform for real-time telemetry, risk mapping, and board-centric metrics focused on business outcome. This is where GRC needs to revamp themselves. The evidence-driven workflow, which you have seen in most of the organization, immutable audit trails, that is the buzzword, and the cross-functional governance build defensible assurance, turning the GRC into a strategic trust foundation. Mature programs prioritize the dynamics verification over the statics list, aligning operation execution with board expectation is a new mantra with all of us needs to go.
Thank you, sir. I think that's a start where I think people should look at how GRC should start with. Where do you see a biggest connect between controls, maturity scores, and actual business resilience in the real-time incidents?
It's a reality today. The biggest disconnect occurs when the maturity scores based on the static assessment and compliance checks fail to reflect the dynamic incident response capability and integrated recovery processes. That is what the real problem happens. High score generally create overconfidence. If everything is a green, and is it a good or bad? It's a good question mark. But during incident or siloed data, untested processes, and very poor integration expose the true weakness of the organization. This gap undermines the resilience as evidenced by persistent operational board misalignments. What we need to know is that the static assessment limit insight. What generally happens in most of the organization, the control maturity models emphasize documentation, periodic audits, overlooking the real-time testing against evolving threats like ransomware, supply chain attacks, and the AI trust issues which you are experiencing today. Most of the organization score high on paper, maybe some of them maybe 90 percentage confidence, but when it comes to the execution, only very limited people pass the test. Hence, the continuous monitoring recognize its value. That is what the GRC needs to go. And also, we need to break the siloed approach versus the overall enterprise integration. Now, unless we look at that, we may fail the GRC into something else. In addition to that, we need to build the real resiliency. What we have seen it in our real world, we have seen dynamic metrics like incident simulation, MTTR, benchmark, post-incident learning loops, better predict resilience that rather than the traditional scores. That is a reality which we are all going through with us, with the customers, with all the organization. However, how do I integrate these with business KPI, shift the focus from checkbox to outcome assurance? That reduce the disconnects observed in most of the benchmarks today.
Got it, sir. What we are seeing is more of documentation that is to be made and available for review is what we see. And with the event of an audit, and now today we are seeing audits being continuously done rather than periodic audits, because what we are seeing is an AI driven incident management, or a proactive protection of the IDPR, IDS, which was there earlier for us to look at threats. I think that's what we are seeing, and continuous monitoring becomes one of the piece where audits become much more easier. And you said greener dashboards, right? It is question mark, or should we look at is something wrong there because it is greener? So I think that's one good statement that I'm trying to get it. Can we see or share a story where everything was compliant yet the trust collapsed when it mattered? Because you said that green pointer there. Is there something that we can put those pointers around it, sir?
Correct. Now, anything which I am speaking here, it's not our customer or it's not our what we experience, but this is based on our multiple learnings from the industry. So I can give you a very well-known story of a UK-based financial services firm. What literally happened, it was a fully compliant with all regulatory audits, and they have a good boasting, impeccable documentation and policies. And when an ISO or any other audit happens, what you see, they have a matured, good process in place, correct? Yet, the reality is a sophisticated ransomware attack evaded detection for 17 days. Even after having all the greener, they could not identify there was a ransomware attack which stayed there for 17 days, crippling most of the operation despite the checkbox cleaner metrics. When it happens, the trust evaporated as stakeholders questioned the program's effectiveness, revealing the reliance on our static compliance over dynamic threat resiliency. Just to give you a background, the, the company performed lots of assessment, comprehensive control mapped with a framework like PCI DSS, GDPR. They performed the annual penetration testing, metascopes, policies, covered all biases, what you heard about AI, or evidence satisfied auditors, surface level perfection, excellent green metrics. The leadership touted compliance as risk mastery, fostering internal confidence. Then what happened? The attackers exploited the novel technique outside of audit tested vectors, bypassing the detection layers. This is what is literally happening today in the AI world. The incident response documented but unexercised beyond compliance demos triggered chaos, delayed containment, fragmented team, cascading outages. Nobody could do anything. The business impact soared with the recovery stretching weeks amid regulatory scrutiny. This led the collapse of the trust. The board and investors recoiled as promised resilience crumbled, speaking props into checkbox security. The reputational damage mounted with fines, lawsuits exposing the gaps, complaints passed, but real world efficiency was absent in that. This fallout prompted overall continuous validation, underscoring GRC's need for outcome based focused assurance. That is what one of the story I can give you. The greener metrics is not always green.
What we are saying is, in any pointer we are vulnerable, but we are protected till the date we are not attacked, or we don't know that we are attacked. So you are safe until there is something new popping up. The greener dashboards don't tell that you are compliant or safe, but continuous monitoring, continuous tracking, and seeing how new vulnerabilities are coming up before doing a proactive work is what you are trying to say that you maintain it till the best possible, but you are still vulnerable, right? And got that, sir. uh, how do you personally define deep real boardroom trust beyond compliance, beyond clean audit reports?
This is a very big question. It's all, and everyone speak the word, correct?
Mhm.
Trust, transparency, and giving everything what is needed. However, the deep real boardroom trust in GRC context means beyond the confidently rely on leadership assurance that controls deliver measurable business outcome, not just passing audit. Just pick up the word like measurable business outcome rather than just passing the audit. If I do that, it transcends the compliance checkbox, embodying evidence based reliance proven through incident and telemetry. This trust enables strategic decision without second guessing operational integrity. What we need to remember and add the core components for that. Trust, as we all know, emerged from the transparency in real time telemetry. Dashboards show control efficiency tied to revenue protection and recovery metrics. Revenue protection and recovery metrics. We also need to think something differently. The psychological safety allows a candid challenge during board sessions, fostering the accountability beyond documentation. That's the key. The consistency in demonstrating incident tested process build institutional faith, aligning the GRC into fiduciary duties. That is something which we are missing in some of the cases. We also need to look at the GRC specific markers. The board only feels this trust when GRC reports quantify resiliency gaps, maybe like MTTR reduction or threat evasion rates, rather than just telling that I have a maturity score. That is a key. Now, how do I create a build it strategically from a GRC perspective? That we need to look at how do I prioritize board centric KPIs? How do I prioritize the board centric KPIs that integrate the business impact, such as maybe cyber insurance premium and regular tabletop exercise, board of survey simulated trust under pressure, evolving GRC from reporting assurance partnership. The deep, real boardroom trust means the board has unshakable confidence in leadership, ability to deliver resilient business outcome grounded in transparent evidence of control effectiveness during the pressure tested scenario, the real time incident. It goes beyond our normal compliance artifacts or audit sign off, focusing on the demonstrable alignment between the GRC execution and the strategic value proposition. This trust, if you do that, that empowers bold decision without constant validation demands. We also need to be aware of evidence over artifacts, reliance proof points, and how do I foster it through the building the through the boardroom exercises, and how do I create that impact in the boardroom is the real leadership resilience which we need to build in the organization, especially for CISO, CIO, and GRC teams.
Thank you, sir. Now, what we are seeing is you need to build resilience, get the boards, understand what exactly is the challenge that we are facing, and also keep the stakeholders in a way that they understand what is the challenges that we are going through. Am I right in saying that, sir?
That's correct.
Sir, now if I have to ask, if you have to reduce those signals to the board by 3 pointers, right? How the board should feel, what would they be? Any 3 pointers that you can list out, sir?
Yeah. Now, if I look at that from whatever we spoke as of now, if I want to give that the three signals of deep boardroom trust are that one of them are intuitive confidence in reliance resiliency claim. The trust which we are building for the claims, the resiliency claim which we are doing, the seamless strategic alignment on risk, and the instinctive support for bold decision under uncertainty. If I want to elaborate, confidence in resiliency means what? The board generally feel unprompted assurance that control have been battle tested through simulations, incident with the transparency, showing real outcome like rapid recovery. It does not happen generally. This replaces doubt with claim certainty during briefings. How do I put the alignment on priority? What generally happens, the members nod in unison when risks are framed in business terms, which we don't do sometime as a GRC professional. How do I show the revenue protection or market edge reflecting the shared understanding beyond compliance jargon? That is the alignment on priority. No translation needed. The GRC speaks their language effortlessly on the revenue protection and market edge. That means confidence in resiliency, alignment on priority, and support without hesitation. How do I do that? The leadership generally proposes aggressive moves, correct? Like market expansion, board backs them instantly, trusted embed safeguards without demanding extra proof. But this buying signal trust the decision making for the organization. The key, elaborate confidence, alignment, support without hesitation is the three key mantra if you want me to talk about the key three signals.
What you're saying is the first point is alignment is very important, because without alignment the other two factors will fall apart, and that's the key thing that you're looking at when we say the three signals. What is one question you wish every board director would ask their CISOs or GSC leaders, sir?
And we go through this. The one question every board director should ask their CISO or the GRC leader is, show me from our last real or simulated incident how our controls measurably protected the key business outcome, or and what are we changing next. If you can demonstrate that from a real or simulated incident, how the controls were measured or measurably protected the key business outcome, in that scenario, what is next? That would be the one of the key question. And why this question? If you look at that, the demanding the evidence of tied to revenue operation, customer trust rather than deficit checkbox, it's normal. However, the board gets a window into adaptive execution, exposing gap between proper controls and pressure tested reality. We need to build the impact on trust, and we need to go beyond the surface. That's generally a little different things. And going beyond the surface means ongoing dialogue on simulation, MTTR, cross functional proof points, evolving oversight from normal skepticism to a partnership level. The director is asking it shift from GRC reporting to a boardroom enabler is the key one question which I want to ask.
Great pointers there, sir. What does it take to translate thousands of controls into simple, credible story a board can understand and act on?
It's a good reality, and we have several regulations, several privacy, several standards, or several controls, CIS, NIST. If you name, and we have everything available in the board. Translating those thousands of technical controls into a compelling boardroom narrative starts with a shift from what we do to try why it matters. What you do, whether does it matter for the organization? That story should bridge the governance, risk, and business context, not compliance language. If you can change that, it takes three enablers: the aggregation, assignment, and articulation. If I say that, what do you mean by aggregation? Correct? We have distilling complex control data into risk themes, performance indicators, many things. So how do I link everything and having, ensuring, and removing the duplicate? And how do I align the controls are framed with the strategic priorities? Very good one. Customer trust, regulatory compliance, operational resilience, brand reputation. If I do that, how do I ensure that my cyber risk to enterprise value protection and growth? Articulation, that is a final thing, is the skill of tuning technical performance into a narrative the board can act on. You need to make sure that you are replacing the jargon with the business impact assessment. Maybe talking about, maybe we generally talk about the reduces our ransomware recovery time by 60%. That is what generally we talk about. However, what we need to tell, and we implemented enabled backup encryption, correct? And then these are the two different messages which a board understand. That is what you need to look at. What is the impact which the board wants to listen? The goal is to make a control visible through outcome. Risk is reduced, resilience strengthened, compliance achieved, and trust reinforced. When the board listens, engage, and invest, then that means that is a business element, not a complicated, not a technical compliance story. What we are seeing that shifting from the control inventory to overall risk narrative. That is what we need to do in the current GRC model.
Now, you mentioned one point where you said you tell the board saying that these are the controls, these are the pointers that we should look at when we talk to the board, and this is how the percentage of false positives or the this one is reduced. Now, I think what you are saying in as many words is give them the numbers which talk, saying that this is the amount of risk that you will, whether it is in terms of revenue or whether it is in terms of the false positives that we are cutting down, or the automation that is cutting down most of the work that you need multiple people to look at. And so you give those numbers and the board will understand, because of this implementation we were able to save this much, because of this implementation we were able to save this much of costs, and with this implementation our percentage of attack surface is reduced is about 40%, 45%, whatever, right? So that's what I think is a pointer that you want to show it to the people there. And how can GRC leaders refrain their board decks from technical detail to a decision ready insight? Because being technical persons, we are overwhelmed with technical details. We want to give all the details, saying this is the function, this is the feature that it has and stuff, right? How do we change that narrative, sir?
It's a reality, and this happens mainly in the audit, and but
Mm,
in it happens to the GRC as a bigger picture. One of the biggest challenge as a GRC leader is presenting to the board is fundamental
yeah.
shift from explaining What happened to enabling what is next? If I want to give an example, in a traditional GRC text or deck presentation, which we see, they say that here are the maybe for 50 risk we are tracking. Instead, if I communicate the same thing saying that here are the 3 to 4 risks that could materially impact our strategy or revenue, does that read differently? Other perspective, technical compliance metrics. We generally say patch compliance 98 percentage. But instead, if I take the same thing, business impact metrics is created talking about unpatched system expose maybe 10 million loss during Q2 or 10 million risk in Q2. Does that make a difference? What we build and what boards needs to decide and by when, then these are the messages we need to translate from the standard traditional approach to a decision ready GRC deck. Now, if I give another one, in a standard or old methodology, prioritization over enumeration, our compliance scorecard shows 127 findings across maybe 8 frameworks. But if I translate that, and here are the 90-day roadmap for the critical item which I need to fix it, which one the board is going to listen? How do you business impact translate into the board? How do you change the risk appetite alignment? And saying that maybe the board previously set our risk appetite maybe 1% for 500 compliance violation. What is that I am going to do now? If we can change these signals to a continuous improvement signal, the board is going to listen. The board is going to see an early warning system, not rear view mirror reporting, which we generally see. And we also need to be very specific and no status update. That is what we need to change our clear decision gate, timeline, investment, and expected outcome. If we can translate this into a board deck, they will listen to you for 3 minutes.
So the timer is set for 3 minutes. I think that that's the point that we are trying to say. I think the point that you are saying is translate that to numbers again, right? So you need to translate whether with 10% of unpatched systems, it could be the cost that you will have when it comes to the revenue fines or the cost that he'll hit us if the patch systems are not patched. Right, right, Rajesh sir?
Yes,
Got
that's
it.
correct.
What are the 2 or 3 slides that must exist in current or the modern cyber GRC board presentation? Because I think we are moving out from the presentation mode where dashboards are replaced. Now, if you have to give a presentation also, what would be those 2 3 slides that you think should be part of every presentation to the board, sir?
And actually, some of the cases, people asked us,
Hmm.
why only three principle?
Okay.
What generally happen, if every board slide tried to communicate everything, none of them would land anywhere.
Okay.
Correct? There are three slides which we believe, which we see a value. The risk posture dashboard, are we under control? Is risk within our appetite? What are the financial quantification? Does this matter? What is the real business impact? And what is our maturity and roadmap? Are we improving? And if I do this three, one, risk poster, financial quantification, maturity, and roadmap, people will listen. Again, I'm saying we may have 2 to 5 minutes maximum for us to justify.
Okay, got it, sir. What immaterial, what we are doing, the 3 minutes is the slab that we have from the boards to listen to the pointers that we have to present, and it should be concise, precise, and clear so that they have the data taken in 3 minutes. That's what we understand. What how can GRC and cybersecurity shift from being seen as a cost center to a visible growth and deal enabler? Because from the start of the cloud adoption, I what I see is security has been always been a checkbox, right? So how do you look at this pointer, sir?
If you ask me today, GRC as a revenue enabler, that would be our strategic reframing in the current world. This is a critical inflection point for the GRC leadership in 2026. The organization winning are those shifting from we do GRC to avoid penalties to we do GRC to win deals, retain customer, and unlock growth. If we can change this shift, we call it as GRC leadership is creating a sustenance model in the new world. And we need to look at all other elements like revenue impact, trust as a differentiator, what is the current market dynamics, how do I GRC enable partnership ecosystem built, what are the technology partnership, how do I create a customer partnership, how do I create and a security conscious buyer, how do I invest and how do I create a signal, risk signal, how do I GRC directly connects to shareholder confidence and business valuation. All these elements, but those 3 points is what we need to remember. We need to look at our GRC program is a strategic growth engine. It unlock customer trust, shorten sales cycle, enable partnership, and protects our annual revenue exposure and risk exposure by XYZ percentage. That is what if we do, GRC absolutely can do a wonders in 2026.
Got it, sir. Now, what are some concrete ways strong controls help organizations win deals, partnerships, and market access?
Okay. So generally, the GRC leaders can position strong controls as direct revenue catalyst by leveraging certification and demonstrated maturity to
Hmm.
unlock customer trust and market access. Some of the concrete example, maybe from recent case studies, demonstrate that how organizations have converted compliance into competitive win. This shift requires trying GRC outcome to sales pipeline acceleration and a partnership eligibility. This is a fundamental shift which is happening from compliance to something else in the current world.
Sir, I was checking somewhere the cybersecurity posture itself creates a lot of difference when we look at the organization's security posture that they are looking at. Starting from your website to where the protection is done and stuff, right? So I think that is what you are bringing up, saying that every control, every pointer that we want to secure should be part of the list of items that we need the organizations to be made secure, right?
That's true.
Got it, sir. Now, how how does the GRC leaders talk in sales customer meetings without sounding like the department or of no, so kind of thing where they say it should not be looking at a sale as well, but you are giving the customer the required data, right? So what is your take on it, sir?
Actually, the GRC leaders can literally transform their role in sales and customer meeting by adopting a consultative, value focused communication style that emphasizes enablement over restriction. When a GRC guy generally talk, he say that we cannot do this because one, two, three reason. If you can change that communication style that emphasize the enablement over restriction, that key shift is from saying no to showing how, framing control as business accelerator, that de-risk deals and build trust. It's not easy, but that is what we need to do as a GRC professional. This approach position GRC as a strategic partner and not a roadblock. Yeah,
So what we are saying is if there is a roadblock that has to be cleared, you need to have the right data given so that they clear that roadblocks, is what we are saying, right?
true.
with See, now currently what we are seeing, the current cloud adoption was a big thing then AI is coming, right? And now with AI and cloud everywhere, how should the GRC leaders rethink controls so that trust still holds, even when the enterprises have no clear boundaries? Because we, when we move to the cloud, our boundaries are boundaryless now, right? These are servers are sitting in different regions, different zones, and that's where we see a lot of things changing. So your take on it, sir?
Yeah, once again, let
Yeah,
me connect the power. Yeah,
sure.
now if I look at that perspective, the cloud it's there for several years now. And if I look at now 2014 onwards, it's a boost. Now
Hmm.
AI, while it was there from 1950s, but the real acceleration happened from 2000, then 2014, 17, then 21. That's where the real AI world came into the picture. In that scenario, the GRC leaders must evolve controls from the standard perimeter based models to a continuous identity centric assurance framework that maintain the trust across the distributed AI and cloud ecosystem. Traditional boundaries have dissolved now in the new world. So the focus shift to a real-time monitoring, data lineage, and human AI governance hybrids that scale with business velocity. This ensures the compliance and risk management remain robust without stifling to innovation, which means we need to look at from a traditional manual approach to a continuous monitoring and identity centric protection. That's maybe the chrysalis become more famous for that, correct?
Right, sir. Now, how do we look at the risk side, sir? What are the new categories of risks that are there? And are you seeing around AI models, data flows, and shared platforms? What is that we see, sir?
Before I answer that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about how did we literally shift to identity and a data centric control in the new AI world?
Okay.
Because the network perimeter, it's all replaced with identity first security tier nowadays.
Right.
Zero trust everywhere. That's what you are hearing everywhere.
Hmm.
And least privileges, continuous authentication, monitoring, behavior, the biometric, device poster, and tracking, governance council, human in the loop. All these items are there today that we need to focus. However, from a GRC leaders, they face an unprecedented AI and cloud risk that demand new control paradigm, but these same technology unlock the transformative opportunity for predictive risk management and trust differentiation. Some of the recent analysis highlighted that the model sprawl, data poisoning, regulatory velocity as some of the top threats, while agentic AI and others proactive mitigation are there in the industry as a large scale. However, we need to look at how do I emerge AI model risk? How do I ensure that the dynamic failure of model is addressed in the risk model, which means I need to come up with a new risk measurement system for me to manage the overall the risk profile, which can translate into an opportunity.
Got it, sir. I got to say, we are saying the tools that are important to start with is the IAM side, the PAM side, right? And you look at zero trust. These are the pointers that we should look at the protection layer first when we start looking at GRC as a compliance thing that we need to look at, right? And
That's true.
if you are advising the board today, what three questions should be asked about AI and cloud risk before approving anything major as an initiative, sir?
If you ask me today, this is one of the biggest challenge. The board must probe beyond the surface level AI hub to uncover hidden risk in models, data flows, and the cloud dependency before giving a green light to major initiative. The top three questions which they need to focus: the measurability, accountability, and the third party exposure in the AI deployment. If I want to put that in a questions ways, how do we measure and prove AI risk are within our risk appetite? Who is accountable when AI fails, and how do we intervene? What third party AI cloud risk are we inheriting, and how do we audit them? These are some of the bare minimum questions the board must probe before they give the green signal.
You're saying they have to analyze beyond what is there at the current moment and see what is the thing that we need to get implemented so that we are much more safer and understand the technicalities also to at least to the basic level. Am I right in saying that?
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. In a hyper connected world, right? How do designing controls and extending trust beyond the walls too? Now we'll have vendors, we'll have partners and critical third parties also, right? So when we have a system built in, we need to have vendors. So how do we look at this pointer where when we talk about vendors, partners, and critical third party people coming into the hyper connected world, sir?
If you ask me, these are the new ecosystem in the new world. The GRC leaders must design the trust chains that extend the organizational control through contractual, technical, and operational mechanism, creating a continuous assurance across hyper-connected ecosystem. Unless we do that, it will become a perimeter security or shared responsibility model. How do we ensure that it become a mutual accountability rather than giving, oh, you didn't do situation? And one of the best solution, most of the people can look at it. How do you architect the cascading trust from core enterprise to the tier, the multiple tier suppliers? How do you convert that language in the new model? Creating a trust chain is a new way of GRC leaders.
Got it, sir. Now, I have two questions before we conclude as we are running on top of the time.
Yeah,
What does practical third party risk management look beyond questionnaires and PDFs?
it's a good question actually. The GRC leaders generally achieve practical third party risk management by shifting from static questionnaire to dynamic API driven evidence flows and real time risk telemetry that operates at business velocity. That's what happens. The questionnaire identify gaps like continuous monitoring and closes them before exploitation. This is something which we need to look at the standard beyond PDF model.
Now, one last question that I have is what can you share an example on where third party risk control failed became a board level crisis? Is there a pointer that you could like to share, sir?
Everyone knows this, and I'm touching upon our CrowdStrike Falcon update crisis, which
Okay.
happened in July 2024. That became the textbook case study for third party control failure, escalating to universal board level crisis affecting maybe 8 to 8.5 million Windows system across Fortune 500 the companies. What literally happened? It is a content validation control. A single faulty sensor update bypassed quality gates, triggering the kernel level crashes globally. What literally happened in 72 hours? Faulty updates deploys, major airlines grounded more than 5,000 flights, healthcare system divert ambulances, security breach disclosure deadline zooms, the board demand why no CrowdStrike exit strategy. That means the GRC failure root cause, what is the real one? The third party risk management missed the three critical signal, the concentration of the risk, control testing gap, and how do you exit the strategy void. These elements signal the beyond the expectation of our third party control failure in 2024? I know we had a short time, but that would be my short answer.
Sir, with this, I have few questions which have come up for us to
Okay.
look at.
Yeah.
I'll bring them up.
Okay.
Now, give me a second, sir. The first question that I have is, which says from Suraj, says, I have a question. All the cases clearly point to the need for continuous compliance, but industry still says on the past with annual half-year audits at best. What is the inertia to move continuous compliance?
And two things to remember: this continuous monitoring or continuous compliance are not replacing our annual or your regular
Right.
audit. Yeah, that would be my first query. These continuous monitoring is your first line of defense, which you are creating for getting an assurance from you first.
Got it, sir. Now I have another question which is come is from a user. I think the username is Dr. Deepak Deshpande, which is not getting displayed here. GRC controls and leaders face significant hurdles in securing boardroom trust due to soiled operations, lack of strategy alignment, and insufficient real-time visibility into risks. What are the strategies in building boardroom confidence in GRP report?
And this is actually we answered in one of the question, but
Yeah.
just me let me repeat that. Basically talking about, first of all, you need to have a good visibility on what is your environment, what is
Mm.
your assets. If I talk about AI, how many AI, which department deployed the AI? Now, how do you identify the transparency, explainability, all those elements? And if you can come back to that, identify the base and the regulatory legal requirement, you will do the best.
Sir, I'll summarize on the pointers that we discussed over the last 45 minutes. Just to say, compliance fails when policy is led instead of evidence led. Proof beats paperwork every time, right? So that's the first thing that I want. Audit readiness is a continuous operating rhythm, not just an annual event. But as you rightly said, annual things will not go, especially under the modern resilience expectations, right? So that is what we say. AI can upgrade GRC production only when governance is explicit, automated, collected, and correlated, not leadership to decisions, right? The faster to trust is better scoped controls, measure signals tied to business outcomes. These are the pointers that I could summarize in whatever we had discussed in the last 45 minutes to 50 minutes. Sir, any pointers that you want to add as a final comment to the audience
Yes.
before we
Yeah.
conclude?
Basically, I wanted that there are seven skills which all the GRC leadership should adopt in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
One, you need to have a good AI risk quantification from technical to financial translation. You need to create a trust economics. How do you ensure the P&L ownership? How do you create a crisis communication command? And how do you address that? How do you create a behavioral engineering culture as a control?
Hmm.
How do you create a third party trust chain? How do you build an ecosystem architect? How do you automate your trust mode, your killer advantage? How do you create a boardroom data storytelling? Unless that quality is built in, we may have a challenge in the new world of CISO.
So I think the last touch point is that the data should be sanitized, verified, and given so that the AI takes the right decisions based on the data that you are providing. Perfectly. I completely align to the pointers that you are saying, sir. And with this, we would like to conclude our session and we'll meet up again next Tuesday with a new topic. Right, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, audience.
Thank you for the opportunity.